So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the celebration of 25 years of PEDro. My name is Chie, and I'll be chairing the session today with Bruno. So just before we start, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land where we are hosting this meeting today, and also pay my respects to the elders, both past and present. I also would like to introduce myself and Bruno, and as I said, we'll be sharing this session today. I would like to cover a few housekeeping points to make sure we are all set for an enjoyable session. So please turn on captions if you would like, and mute your microphone and use the chat for comments. And if you need any technical support, you can always send a text to Geraldine or to me or Bruno. And this session will be recorded. So just to let you know, if you don't feel comfortable, you can always close your camera. And oh, this is this is not updated to our time, but we are starting at 4 and aiming to finish at 5 p.m. EG time. All right, so this is the schedule for today. We are going to have a lot of very welcome speakers today, and also show you some videos from PEDro.
All right, welcome everybody. I'll start introducing our first guest, Dr. Rick Dawson, giving an APA welcome. So Dr. Rick Dawson is an aged care physiotherapist, former managing director of the Age Well Physiotherapy, and the president-elect of the Australian Physiotherapy Association. He's a postdoctoral researcher at the Institute of Musculoskeletal Health at the University of Sydney, and Ricky focuses on the effectiveness of physiotherapy, exercise, and telehealth in reducing falls and improving mobility among older people. So welcome, Rick.
Thanks so much, Bruno. Just want to thank everybody for inviting me today. As we all know, physiotherapy is an evidence-based profession, and it depends on physiotherapists being able to interact genuinely with scientific research. And the APA is a proud supporter and one of the principal funders of PEDro. Next slide. The APA has invested heavily in integrating the Australian College of Physiotherapists specialisation career pathway into our strategic plan. We believe by enhancing training and credentialing, we can benefit our patients, physiotherapists, and the health sector in more general. And as an evidence-based profession, we believe it's crucial for clinicians to access relevant research and implement it effectively with their patients. PEDro has supported our members staying up to date for 25 years. We recently supported PEDro in developing the Level 3 evidence-based physiotherapy practice course to aid physiotherapists on their path to titling, where they can call themselves a sports physio or, like myself, a gerontological physio. And we believe that the candidates for titling and specialisation, it's important for them to become PEDro raters because it supports them in understanding what is quality research, which is key to their career success. PEDro has assisted many specialists to achieve the scholarly section of their clinical specialisation pathway. Next slide. The next slide presents our current strategy. And PEDro has significantly supported our research foundation behind the build of our advocacy assets. And our primary aim is to influence current and future policy environment where physiotherapists operate. To achieve this, we've prioritised key papers tailored for both funders and political audience. This includes the economic value proposition, and we've also developed lots of different papers on clinical conditions using PEDro, for example, low back pain, neck pain, and Parkinson's, to name a few. Next slide. So we want to say thank you to PEDro. We want to say thank you for empowering our members to engage with research and effectively apply it in their everyday care. And we look forward to being a principal funder in the future and supporting PEDro for the next 25 years. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Rick. The next speaker is Associate Professor Sinara Sakamori from the University of Del de Saloro, Faculty of Medicine Clínica Alemana in Chile. So welcome, Sinara, and can you turn on your microphone? Yeah. So welcome, Sinara, and yeah.
Hello. Good afternoon here. My name is Sinara Sakamori, and it's a great honor to be here speaking in the celebration of PEDro. First, I would like to extend my congratulations to all those visionary individuals who dreamed of and designed PEDro, as well as to those who have maintained the database over the years. Your efforts have transformed our field. In recent years, a substantial body of evidence about physiotherapy has emerged, supporting our clinical practice with robust research. And PEDro has been instrumental in this progress. Next slide, please. So we have used the research tool for several systematic and scoping reviews. Here are some examples. And for the last 25 years, we have relied on PEDro to access high-quality clinical research. However, the importance of PEDro extends beyond merely serving as a research tool. It has significantly impacted education, fostering the teaching of evidence-based practice to both physiotherapists and physiotherapy students. The PEDro Search for Evidence and the PEDro Scale are invaluable educational resource that we use regularly in Chile. Next slide. Well, in October 2023, we had the privilege of welcoming Mark Elkins to the Universidad del Desarrollo in Chile. And in that time, Mark promoted PEDro resource and also inspired us to produce high quality evidence and endorse PEDro. Next, please. So I hope PEDro continues to advance our profession and extends its reach to even more people. And from Latin America, we say congratulations, PEDro, and thank you. Thank you to those that maintained the platform over the past 25 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sinara.
Okay, I'll introduce the next speaker. Associate Professor Oscar Ronzio. So Oscar is a physiotherapist, doctor in health science, and the chair of the World Physiotherapy South America region. He is the head of the physiotherapy department at Universidad Maimonides in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and associate professor at the Universidad Nacional Arturo Jauretche in Florencio Varela, Buenos Aires, Argentina. Welcome, Oscar.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Can you share the slides? Okay, I think you can see it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. As chair of World Physiotherapy South America region, I want to congratulate PEDro teams on this incredible achievement. It's only 25 years, almost the same amount of time since the widespread use of internet in America Latina. So we can imagine that this is a lot of times. As you know, World Physiotherapy has 5 regions. I am the chair of South America, and it is composed by 12 countries, but it is not organized, geographically organized. We have several countries from Central America too. The scientific production in Latin America, as you can imagine, is very heterogeneous. Brazil is the leading producer, followed by Chile, Colombia, Venezuela, and then Argentina. If we search in Redalyc, that is one of the databases here that we use in Latin America, we can find 30 articles using PEDro database. Over the past 25 years, PEDro has become a vital tool for promoting evidence-based physiotherapy worldwide. But the most used database in Latin America is LILACS, and we can find 136 articles that already use PEDro database or PEDro for doing this research. And of course, it's great to have it in Spanish and in Portuguese too, because it's the most common native language here in Latin America. So, of course, we are now in our social networks supporting PEDro database, and I invite everyone to buy a coffee to PEDro to follow this great system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oscar, for your presentation. So now I'm going to show you a video that we have prepared that will present an overview of PEDro.
So I'm an avid PEDro user. So I've used PEDro as a clinician, but also as an academic and as a researcher. So I think PEDro is important because I think it helps me to locate the high quality evidence in a shorter time. Then that would of course influence what I teach and also influence the treatments that are being delivered.
Community is really important, and physiotherapists form a great community, so I'm sure many people will kind of get it when I say you always know somebody somewhere. So we have a great community of practitioners, and I think that's the first thing I like about PEDro. It's, you know, focused in to our community, and it's selecting evidence that's appropriate to our community.
We're awash with all kinds of dodgy journals out there, so to have a trusted resource to go to where you can reliably access knowledge around what is the evidence, what is reliable evidence for this condition, I think is absolutely critical. But actually to have an independent body that's not got vested interest to say, hey, what is the evidence for this? That's so important for us as a profession, and for clinicians to go, I can trust this as a source of reliable, accurate knowledge.
All right, and the next video is a little bit about the history of PEDro. So I really hope you enjoy this one as well.
At one stage in the School of Physiotherapy at the University of Sydney, lecturers were given the opportunity to run elective subjects, and I ran one on using clinical trials to make clinical decisions. The assignment for it required that students go and find 3 clinical trials on a question of their interest and critically appraise them. So over the period of several years, I accrued several hundred randomised trials. So I remember talking to Kathy about it, and we thought, oh, this is a pretty valuable resource. We could do something with this. And we put our heads together and we decided that there's this new thing called the internet, and we might put it on the internet. And we put it on a PC in the lab and got PEDro up and running.
I think I realised when I travelled, because I could be in places in South America and people wouldn't know who I was. But once you mentioned PEDro, their eyes would light up and things would warm. And so, yeah, I guess I realised at that point in time, we'd created something which had global recognition, which is pretty extraordinary. And so that was probably within 5 or so years of developing PEDro. So it's amazing that you could reach all these different parts of the world so quickly.
I really realised we were onto a good thing when 2 organisations really helped us, the Australian Physiotherapy Association and also the Motor Accidents Authority of New South Wales. And they provided seed funding for us to get started, which was really pivotal. But more importantly, they provided some recurrent funding, and the Australian Physiotherapy Association is still an important funder of PEDro. And it was their vision for wanting to improve patient outcomes and not having to get something out of it, like it was the philanthropic doing something good for physiotherapy in New South Wales, Australia and the world, that they really invested in it.
I think for me, the most mind-blowing thing was when Anne started working out how to actually record the statistics from the website. And then we really realised, how many countries around the world were actually using PEDro and the absolute number of users.
We started off having 50 concurrent users, and so now there's a new search initiated every 10 seconds, and it's used across the globe. So, for example, in countries that are experiencing quite a lot of hardship at the moment, like the Ukraine, physiotherapists are still using PEDro to guide practice. And so hopefully we're influencing the quality of care in countries that are really struggling because of other issues.
Many physiotherapists won't realise that as recently as the 1990s, really there was very little research going on in physiotherapy. I think PEDro had a role in turning that around and making people look specifically at evidence of the effectiveness of interventions rather than just at the mechanisms or hypothesised mechanisms behind things.
My proudest moment with PEDro was when I was awarded the Mildred Elson Award by the then World Confederation for Physical Therapy in 2019. And I received the award because of my contribution to physiotherapy because of PEDro. And I feel like I was hogging the limelight there because the real star of the show was PEDro. PEDro winning this amazing prestigious award was a great validation of the importance of PEDro globally.
To me, another factor in the kind of global engagement is the number of different languages that the website has been translated into. And that's, again, Anne's hard work with making connections from people all around the world to, volunteer to actually translate elements of the website.
Yeah, and for us, that's an international expression of people's goodwill and their enthusiasm and altruism.
I think to me, the most amazing feedback has been when we've attended the World Physiotherapy Congresses, and we hold stalls on PEDro at those congresses, and the number of people who genuinely come up from countries all around the world and talk about how they've contributed to PEDro or how they're using PEDro, and how PEDro makes a difference in their practice is quite mind-blowing.
Well, the challenge is that we've got an exponential growth in research, which in one way is good, but it then makes the cost of running PEDro quite high and growing exponentially each year, which you would understand. And so I think that is the challenge. You have to look to technology to provide the solution to that challenge. Obviously we can't turn off research. That'd be a pretty silly way to solve the problem. So really we've got to get a technological solution so that we can archive and synthesize and make available the evidence. And so it's on that side of the equation that we need to get something happening.
Right.
All right. Just before we go to the next speaker, I just would like to invite you to feel free to put some questions on the chat for the speakers if you like, because at the end of the session we're going to have some time for that, to go through that.
That's great. Yeah, I was about to comment about those videos. I think it's the third time that I watched those videos, and I love them. It's so well produced and really insightful about the importance of PEDro. So make sure you share the campaign for Buy PEDro Coffee. It's in your social medias, with your email listing. I think PEDro really needs that. And yeah, and it's to survive another 25 years, hopefully. Okay, our next speaker is Tie Yamato. One fun fact about Tie is that he was the host of the PEDro 15 years anniversary. I was 2, but so it's been 10 years that both of us, we've been contributing to PEDro with great. Tie is an expert in musculoskeletal pain in children and adolescents. She is currently a research fellow at the University of Sydney, and she has been a PEDro contributor since 2014 and co-leader of the Brazilian satellite. Okay, welcome here again.
All right, so today I'll talk a little bit about the resource that PEDro has been developed over the last 25 years. So I thought it would be great to start thinking a little bit about the physiotherapy as a profession. And so we all know the challenge we face to implement evidence-based practice, but also we also know that the patient outcome and the success of the treatment really depend on this. So aiming to inform physiotherapy practice, PEDro has lots of very interesting and important resources available. For today's presentation, I decided to share some key milestones, but of course, PEDro offers much more, and you can always check the other resources available on the website. The first one that I would like to talk is the database itself. So the database is really the backbone of PEDro. It's like the library for physiotherapy evidence. And at the beginning, it was just a pile of printed articles, as I've heard. But today we have more than 63,000 systematic reviews, trials, and guidelines. PEDro's reach is huge in terms of how it has been used over the globe. And PEDro is accessed by more than 215 countries with more than 10,000 daily searches and with one search every 10 seconds. The second milestone is the PEDro scale. This is like a report card for research. If the database is the library, then the scale is kind of the librarian, ensuring that you find the best research available. The third one, I would say, is all the training program and different campaigns, including video tutorials that PEDro provide, but I choose 2 to be mentioned here today. The first one is the PEDro Tackle Barriers campaign that aimed to hear about physios complaints, to use evidence-based practice, and to provide insights on how to break down those barriers. And the second one is the PEDro scale training that teach how to assess physiotherapy trials for methodological quality. And if you're not familiar with that, you can just scan this QR code and it's going to take you to the PEDro scale training page. And the last one, but not least, is the World Wide Journal Club. So the Journal Club was launched in 2020, and it's been a great success in generating discussion around the latest research for a certain field. So key studies addressing important gaps in evidence are selected, and then discussion is generated to explore how we can implement those insights to improve care. So PEDro has changed the future of physiotherapy, impacting physiotherapy practice globally, and I would like to show you some examples of this. So the first one, I think, is really the internationalization. So today, PEDro speaks 17 languages, and this means that physiotherapists all around the world can access evidence-based resources in their native language. This may sound trivial, but we should probably remember that language is one of the biggest barriers to assess and use evidence-based practice. So this is a huge achievement. The second one is the evidence in your inbox. This is probably the easiest way to keep you updated. So PEDro can send you all the new evidence on a specific area of your choice. And through this QR code, you'd just be directed to the evidence in your inbox subscription page if you're not familiar with it. And again, last but not least, the newsletter. So the newsletter brings information on the latest developments and research. So to finish, I would like to say that from those 5 very smart people, we are now a huge community. And today, I think more than a PEDro collaborator, I'm here as a Brazilian physiotherapist that recognize how PEDro has changed the profession and the professionals, especially in my country, in the past 25 years. It's amazing to see how PEDro provides resources that are vital for a better clinical practice. And so today, I would like to thank you all and to ask for us all to continue to hold hands and keep PEDro alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chia. Awesome, thank you. So some of you are asking how to share the PEDro campaign. Actually, no one asked it, but I want to just remind you. If you go to the PEDro website, pedro.org.au, if the first thing you see is donate PEDro coffee. But if you want to go to your language, you can select the Portuguese, and then you can buy a cafezinho for PEDro, or in Spanish, you can find something about buying a coffee, a cafecito for PEDro. So I'll hand over to you, Tia, to introduce the next speaker.
Yeah, so the next speaker is Professor Yannick Tozin-Laflamme. So Yannick is a physiotherapist and full professor at the School of Rehabilitation of the University of Sherbrooke. His research program is mainly structured around chronic pain management, where he has carried out several projects aiming to improving physiotherapy management of population with various musculoskeletal disorders. So welcome, Yannick. And I am assuming you're going to share your slides. Is that right?
No, I didn't prepare any slides, but I just
oh, you don't have slides.
No, yeah. I just prepared a few words for you all. So thanks again for the invitation. Great. I'm very pleased to be here today. So and thanks again for giving me the chance to acknowledge the outstanding contribution PEDro have had for the past 25 years. I'm actually very proud to be part of an organization dedicated to fostering collaboration and advancing knowledge dissemination that really improves the quality of care physical therapists provide worldwide. And as someone who also shares PEDro's passion for collaboration and knowledge dissemination, I'm proud to contribute to the continuance of this vital mission by the Diagnostic Test Accuracy Database. So PEDro Canada, which I lead, and I have collaborators, and among us is also Christian Longtin, which I like to acknowledge. Christian leads the monthly update of DITA. So we are proud to ensure that we continue to build on the foundation of excellence that was undertaken by the founders of PEDro. And I hope that collectively we can continue to empower professionals and enhance the quality of care for the communities we serve. So thanks again. I'm very proud to be part of this organization. 25 years is a great milestone, and 25 years is also a personal milestone for me because I began my practice 25 years ago, so it's a small coincidence, but again, so thanks again.
Thank you very much, Professor Yannick.
All right. Yeah, pleasure to introduce our next speaker, one of the co-directors of PEDro. So this Associate Professor Mark Elkins from the University of Sydney School of Medicine and Health. He also serves as the scientific editor for the Journal of Physiotherapy, a very respected journal in your area. and he's a member of our PEDro database. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. So if you go to the PEDro resources page, you'll find papers published by the PEDro team under these headings. So some look at how PEDro can help with evidence-based practice, others analyze the content of PEDro, others analyze the usage of PEDro or the PEDro scale. And people often like to see how these things accumulate over time. So initially, for the first few years, things accumulated slowly. There was mainly papers on the whole content of PEDro or on evidence-based practice. There was one on core journals in physiotherapy and one on the PEDro scale. And then after that first decade, things really took off and started accumulating more and more quickly. There was a lot done on randomized trials and trial quality. There was ones on data and systematic reviews and so on. Okay. So this shows things accumulating slowly for the first decade and then faster after that. So from that timeline, I just want to feature a few papers. The first one is the first paper ever published about PEDro. Coincidentally, there was the size of the database when this very first paper was published was 1/25 of what it is now on its 25th birthday. The next paper that I want to talk about was this one, which was published by, again, the 4 initiators of PEDro, which was done in response to when we encouraged people to go and read trials. People said, oh, the trials all show that physiotherapy is ineffective. And so this was showing that there was evidence in each subdiscipline of physiotherapy showing effective interventions. We sometimes get the same sort of criticism today or response today about systematic reviews. So we're also looking at systematic reviews in physiotherapy and trying to show that more of them are becoming conclusive over time. The next paper is this one, which is about the reliability of the PEDro scale, which has been cited over 5,000 times. And that's because it's being used in more and more systematic reviews and now going beyond physiotherapy into speech pathology and pharmacology and all sorts of other areas. Then there's a whole stack of studies that you might call grumpy report card studies, where we've looked at the quality or the reporting or the registration of studies in physiotherapy and found them to be not as good as they could be. Fortunately, we've often come back and looked at these same issues or similar issues over time, and what we can see is that there is an improvement in those criteria over time. So that's gratifying. Another, some of these report card papers have gone on to spawn initiatives within the profession. So this one looked at the use of 95% confidence intervals and how many trials weren't using them. And so that got the interest of the journal editors, and they made a campaign to encourage people to use confidence intervals. And what we've seen is a steady improvement in the proportion of trials that report confidence intervals. So if you want to do one of these sort of studies that uses the content of PEDro as its fodder, as its units for analysis, then send me an email and we can send you a template to fill in just to make sure we get you the data that you need. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark.
We are now going to see one more video about the different elements of PEDro from the rater's perspective.
The training was great. It was easy to follow. It took me through each of the steps in a time that suited me, and I was able to do it from the comfort of my own home.
It was self-paced, so I could pause and repeat content as much as I liked at any time. There was also support from the PEDro team if I had any queries throughout the training.
I could do it from where I live in rural South Australia. I could do it from the city. Being a PEDro rater is a really great way to improve my understanding of research and really sustain and build on how these papers apply to my patients. Being a PEDro rater has been a really rewarding way to contribute to the physiotherapy research profession.
Everyone has the potential to be a PEDro reviewer. I recommend all of my HDR students become involved as PEDro reviewers, and I've even had some undergraduate students get involved too.
Okay, I'll introduce the next speaker, Associate Professor Judy King. So Judy is a physiotherapist, Associate Professor in the Physiotherapy program at the University of Ottawa in Canada. Yeah, welcome, Judy. I can see you now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for this invitation. It's very exciting. I would like to also congratulate PEDro for 25 years. It doesn't seem that long how quickly we go. I'm in Ottawa, which is the unceded territory of the Algonquin people, who are the traditional guardians of this land. Because I've had more than 25 years of experience, I thought I would do an analogy for those who love to have a white Christmas. We are getting a white snowfall right now. I'll just show you this out my window. I don't know if you can see, maybe not. Can you see? There we go. Nice snowy day. So
my God.
before PEDro, that was what it was like working as a physiotherapist. There was lots of literature, but it was very snowy, or the analogy in each of your countries. So I'm very fortunate to have had the experience working in Canada and being mentored and role modeled by some fabulous physios in Canada that were at the forefront of evidence-based practice: Paul Stratford, Dina Brooks, Lucy Brasso, and Marilyn McKay-Lyons. But their work certainly was just amplified with PEDro when it came along. My topic was to talk a little bit about real world. So up until very recently, I was still working clinically in the ICU at one of our local hospitals here. And I know from my personal working with patients how beneficial it was to have the resources of PEDro available. But also in terms of other folks, not just working with patients in the evidence, but using the best evidence, which has been mentioned before, to influence decision makers in the healthcare system. So again, I've been around enough to know that it was the time when, physio doesn't work about this or that, but having the evidence there to build those arguments has been instrumental. I have the privilege to sit on the World Physiotherapy Education Committee, and so I also see sort of the big spectrum of education across our wonderful world. And having PEDro really helps to democratize information. The digital divide isn't there as severely for different places. And also having it in multiple languages is very important. I work in a bilingual French-English university, so it's formidable. And so félicitations, and thank you for all your hard work. And here's to another 25 years.
Thank you very much, Judy. Great analogy. Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. All right, our next speaker is Associate Professor Bruno Soragiotto. So Bruno is a leading expert in musculoskeletal pain management and digital health. currently the head of the physiotherapy department at the University of Technology, Sydney. He has been a proud PEDro contributor since 2014 and a co-leader of the Brazilian satellite. Welcome, Bruno.
Right, you have my slides, right? Yeah, good. Yeah, I'll just talk briefly about the PEDro Brazil, the PEDro Brazil satellite, just to give you one example or ways of funding and or people, maybe to inspire you to have new satellites. We had Yannick talking about the Sherbrooke satellite, and we have a few others around the world, but just an overview. So our people, pretty much Tia and I, we running the satellite with a few or bright alumni, Junior, Veronica, and Mariana, who finished their PhDs last year, and also Professor Leo and Luciola also giving support. And we are all hosted at the Universidade Cidade de São Paulo in São Paulo, which is our PEDro partner. Right now, we are working on maintaining clinical practice guidelines, doing searches for PEDro, screening articles, meeting the PEDro criteria, and trial ratings. But other satellites, they have many different activities, and we recruit volunteers as well and provide training for them. Right now, we are very proudly funded by the Physiotherapy, which I think we may have someone from there here, which is a company on online courses and online post-graduation program. And they fund us through our podcast. We have a podcast called The Physio Frontiers. The podcast is in English, so everyone can access, but it's directed to Brazilian physios in a sort of way. And we had, of course, the #1 episode. The first one was with Annie Mosley about the PEDro database, and then we have a few other international speakers, Chad Cook, Peter Sullivan, Steve Kemper, and many others. And other funny opportunities, I just want to mention, I think sponsorship, research, or teaching and learning grants. They can work. We still don't have any, but it's something we are looking for, or creating different materials like online courses, webinars, funding campaign, crowdfunding. I think there are ways to fund the satellites. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, I think that's all. Just showing one example for you for the PEDro Brazil.
Great, thank you so much, Bruno. And I would like to invite our next speaker, which is Professor Jenna Auguston. So Dr. Jenna is currently a professor in the Department of Physical Therapy at the College of San Scholastica, where she has been an academic for over 22 years. She is serving as the chair of the Evidence-Based Practice, a special interest group with the APTA Research Academy. She has been teaching evidence-based physical therapy topics for over 15 years and has been an integral part of effectively teaching this content in traditional, transitional, and continuing education sessions. So welcome, Jenna.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I don't have anything scripted, so you'll have to bear with me, but I wanted to just repeat what most of you already said. So this is an amazing resource for all of us around the world. And I thank you to PEDro for really bringing us all together, right? You know, that we have a resource that's common for all of us, and that we can also see that our practices are very similar across the world. I know that one thing I'd like to highlight maybe a little bit differently is that I've been teaching evidence-based practice since we, you know, kind of in the US, we moved from a master's to a clinical entry-level clinical doctorate degree. And we have been incorporating PEDro since we started doing that. And that's been over 20 years. So pretty much since the inception of PEDro, the US, we have been listing it. It's in all of our major textbooks, in several of our, you know, I teach in a wide variety of venues in the profession of PT, and PEDro is consistently listed. And I think, you know, in the US, we do have our own kind of an evidence-based practice resource, but it's housed within our association, and you have to be a member to access that, which only about 25% of people are members. So thank you for offering this free resource again. And also, you're the only really the only accessible search engine that provides a rating scale, which of course is so important. So thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to how we can be more involved as chair of the evidence-based practice section. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thanks for being here today.
Okay, our next speaker is Associate Professor Fabiana Moraleda. She's at the Department of Physiotherapy, Faculty of Medicine at the Federal University of Ceará, and she's a great partner of PEDro Brazil too. Welcome, Fabi.
Thanks, Bruno. Thank you, everyone, and congrats, PEDro, for its anniversary. So I'll just, could you pass the slide, please? Yes, thank you. Just a bit. I just wanted to share a bit about my personal journey with PEDro, and it's been a while, maybe too while now, but it has started when I was an undergrad student at Federal University of Ceará, of Minas Gerais, actually, where I was born. When we first had critically appraised topics talking about that on women's health discipline. So we had to understand about PEDro database and understand about internal validity of research for the first time. And this was embedded within our curriculum up until we graduated. And it also had, PEDro also was with us when we were candidates for a master's and doctorates programs there at the university. So me, as a student, I started to use that very early on in the process. But now, could you go to the next one, please, Bruno? When I became a professor here, a lecturer actually at Federal University of Ceará, which is in northeast of Brazil, we started implementing a bit of PEDro and that journey that started with me and myself and other colleagues using this critically appraised topics. This is in Portuguese, but we started using that, and we are actually using this semester, but it's been over 10 years, using that to frame evidence search and implementation of research when students have their first encounter with patients in orthopedics. So it's in the second year of the undergrad student. And we're now using that and other strategies along their curriculum to implement. And actually, a student of ours just said today, like, Fabiana, this is just what we know. We don't know any alternative route in terms of implementing high quality evidence. This is part of what we understand that is relevant to physiotherapy. So next one, please. And now in 2024, we are just using that also to expand for graduate studies and expand that with collaborators from other universities from Brazil. And this is a shared journey. So these are just keywords about the utility of PEDro. So this is not research, but I asked for some students of ours to talk about the perceived utility, and this was about platform. It helps them to with the decision-making process, quality of evidence, physiotherapy implementation. And so just as to summarize that, please, Bruno. This is just a part of my journey, but it's kind of like a PEDro in a full circle from student to professor. And also I understand that this has given us opportunity to expand our collaborative work in terms of professors and universities, and using that embedded in the learning system to use it as an anchor to foster collaboration, foster research, and also education. So it's been a privilege. And I salute again PEDro and all the people that are involved. And please, let's get that coffee.
So thanks, Fabi. And I would like to invite our next speaker, Luciana Macedo. So Lu is an associate professor in the School of Rehabilitation at McMaster University, Canada, and academic lead of the Aging and Pain program from the McMaster Institute for Research on Aging and the McMaster Institute for Pain Research and Care. So welcome, Lu.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, and congratulations again to PEDro for reaching this incredible anniversary. It is a pleasure to have been invited to speak to you about PEDro and in this American time zone celebration. As I say, I'm in Canada, but I also have strong ties in Brazil and also Australia. So I'm very happy to have been invited for this talk today. So I wanted to start just a little bit like Fabiana started, talking a little bit about my trajectory within PEDro. So many of you don't know, but I did my PhD in Australia and worked in the group that were the founders of PEDro, and was a PEDro assessor between 2007 and 2010. And although PEDro started many years before me, I still feel like I was part of the history of PEDro. And I think that's part of the power of PEDro. We all part of PEDro, we all contribute to it, and it's part of a community. And I think PEDro was instrumental for my learning. And during my PhD, it was really important to foster a stronger research and evidence-based practice lens, and also build my curriculum. And really was instrumental in me achieving my goals for my PhD and my career afterwards. And what I wanted to talk today about was really about that strength of PEDro, that it's not just about the database, but all of the strength that, oh, sorry, next slide. I was talking about the slide, and you can go to the next one now. Sorry. To the strength of PEDro, that it's a broader contribution to the physiotherapy community that goes beyond the database. So, and I think that it spans to the contributions that it had in my life and continues to have in my life and other researchers around the world. So I think it combines a lot of the videos that were presented and some of the talks that were presented today. I think PEDro provides an incredible education and research advancement opportunity for clinicians and researchers, whether it's through the database or through the educational resources and the updates that you can receive through the PEDro. In addition, I think one important thing that happens behind the scenes at PEDro is that it's a really strong support for early and mid-career researchers. And I think that's really an applause to the leadership team of PEDro that really supports the community around them and gives opportunities for many of the researchers that are starting to continue to contribute to PEDro and build their career around this incredible resource for our profession. The other part, I think Sally Lamb talked about this in her video, was about the community support and engagement, how it makes us feel part of the community, whether it's increasing our connection to the clinicians, to researchers, and really across researchers and different people in the profession around the world. And it's an incredible resource for students, researchers, and clinicians. So in addition to the database, I say many of my students and collaborators talking about using resources from PEDro, such as the condensed interval calculation worksheet that's available within PEDro, and using the PEDro scale in itself within their research. So it goes well beyond many of the resources that I think are sort of the staple of PEDro, but there's a lot more that PEDro does behind the scenes. They're incredible, important for our profession. And then next slide, please. And I think I just wanted to end showing a little bit about the usability of how much PEDro has been used around the world, and in Canada particularly. In 2023, we had about 21,000 physiotherapists, and we're looking at around 50 to 60,000 clicks over the year. So you're talking about a lot of clicks in Canada, but what I wanted to say too is that we want to continue to work with PEDro and build more collaborations with PEDro over the years and continue to support this amazing database for our profession. Thank you.
Thank you, Luciana. Thank you very much.
Okay, now I have some time, few minutes for some questions to any of the speakers, myself, or any of the PEDro directors. We have Kathy Sherrington, Mark Elkins, Geraldine Chu. I think you can use maybe other than the microphone, you can use the raise your hand button, or use the chat. Yeah, in the chat is working. I can start with a question. A question to maybe Geraldine or Kathy, just about what the future of PEDro, what's coming for the next 25 years.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, as Chris alluded to in his video, the size of the job is getting more challenging, and the world's changing. So we really are keen to look to new solutions. So looking at incorporating AI, looking at doing things differently. We're really keen to work out how to involve more people. Perhaps more working parties, perhaps regional committees, more satellite centres. So yeah, we're very open to a whole range of different suggestions for how we might really continue and expand PEDro to sort of keep pace with the modern world. Also looking for more opportunities for funding. So if anyone can kind of think of organisations who might be willing to donate, we're also introducing advertising. So also looking for organisations who might be interested in advertising on PEDro.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Yeah, does anyone else have any other question or a comment? You can even share your journey with PEDro in very briefly, but you can. Yeah. And make sure we share the campaign, the Buy PEDro Coffee, in all the languages available. All right, if there's no questions at all, we can, maybe that's the end. It's 9 o'clock.
I just want to quickly thank everyone, everyone who's been involved over all the years of PEDro. So these are all the sort of formal partners, but as you've seen, there's been many contributors, sort of too many to fit on the slide, and yeah, many of those people here today. So yeah, we're incredibly grateful. Oh yeah, here we are. He's just in 2024 naming all the PEDro raters. Yeah, so as we said, sort of share the campaign, get in touch with suggestions, and how you can help. We're really keen to kind of recognise contributors and collaborators as well. These people are all kind of named on the website as well. We're just going through the different committees who are involved at the moment, the sort of different working parties, advisors, staff. And yeah, we've also got a survey that you can fill in to sort of let us know how you'd like to get involved more in future. I think I've covered it, but just hand over to Geraldine, the incredible PEDro manager, to see if you'd like any final words, Geraldine.
Excuse me, sorry. Yeah, and thank you everybody for attending. I am the person behind the scenes, and I think everything's been covered. After this event, I plan to send you a recording of the event and a copy of this QR code that goes to a survey, because we'd like to continue the conversation about having the global community involved with sustaining PEDro for another quarter of a century or more. So look out for that, and thanks everybody so much for your interest and your engagement, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much, Geraldine, and thank you all the speakers for being here today and everyone participating in the session. It was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it was a very productive hour, and as you can see, that much more than hundreds of people are part of PEDro, so it's a huge resource that our profession got it. I don't think many other professions, they wanted to have a resource like that and they don't have it. So let's continue working together, for keeping PEDro alive for the next 25 years. Thank you all.